فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين.
طيب نقول بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. طيب, we'll start with a quick review, inshallah ta'ala, of the previous lesson and the questions that are related to it. Sheikh Ayman Suwaid, may Allah bless him and preserve him, appended 2 chapters at the end of the book, which are about what? And this is, you'll find this, which is mentioned in the introductory pages. So at the end of the book, he added, what is it? The method of teaching Quran in Medina and the method of teaching in Damascus, no. Uthman radiallahu anhu's method of teaching, no. The developmental stages of writing the vowelization of Quranic texts, and another memorizing Quran. So before we start, you guys did not take the quiz, correct? Did anyone take the quiz? Sheikh Bilal, did you take the quiz?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Were you able to take the quiz, Sheikh Bilal?
Oh, yes, I took it.
Okay, and how did you find it?
Oh, I didn't hear you.
How did you find it?
Oh, it was okay. There was 1 or 2 questions I wasn't clear on what was asking, but after I looked at it a couple of times, and then I got it. Other than that, it was all right.
Okay, so with the quiz, what we'll do is I'll give you guys time to do it over the next week. There's going to be another quiz for today's lesson, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll start on today's lesson instead of going over the quiz, which you all are not familiar with. So we'll go over today's lesson, inshallah, and then we'll do both quizzes next week, inshallah ta'ala. So let me get to where we are today. So the last thing we talked about was mistakes in the glorious Quran. Hidden mistakes. And all right, so we'll start with the summary. All right, so when it comes to the mistakes in reciting the Quran, there is clear mistakes and then there are obscure mistakes, or al-lahnul jali or al-lahnul khafi. And here are some examples of al-lahnul jali, clear mistakes. And clear mistakes are forbidden if done on purpose, and forgiven, especially for a person who does not, who's not able to correct these particular mistakes. So these are examples. Putting a letter in place of another, and the example is alhamdu as opposed to alhamdu. So placing a letter in place of another. Putting a vowel in place of another, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen as opposed to rabbil alameen. Adding or decreasing a letter, Allahu samad. So here we added waw, and we decreased or took away the alif lam. It's also a clear mistake. Exchanging a word, ghafurun halim as opposed to ghafurun rahim. Omitting or adding a word. So for example, iyyaka na'budu, iyyaka nasta'in, iyyaka na'budu, iyyaka nasta'in. So we took out the waw. Vowel instead of a sukoon, ana'amta as opposed to an'am, taking out an elongation. So for example, غير المغضوب, someone says غير المغضوب عليهم, المغضوب عليهم, omitting an elongation. So all of these are types of mistakes, right? Not types of mistakes, excuse me. All of these are examples of a clear mistake in the Quran. Next mistake again is permissible. Correct, Brother Bilal?
It was breaking up at the end. Can you say it again?
So making a clear mistake when reciting the Quran is permissible, correct?
No.
Impermissible. Haram.
Haram, right.
So here are examples of an obscure mistake. An obscure mistake is lahn al-khafi, a mistake that is recognized by people who have understanding of tajweed. An example is adding to the duration of the met, the original met. For example, a person says, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. What kind of mistake is that, Brother Hassan?
هذا يعني نحن انتقلنا إلى اللحن الخفي.
اللحن الخفي, أحسنت. بارك الله فيك. Pronouncing a pseudo vowel instead of a vowel. So for example, أهدنا الصراط المستقيم, أهدنا, as opposed to E. So it's not a kasra E, nor is it a fatha A, it's somewhere between. That's a obscure mistake. Missing a qalqala, for example, right? Inna Ibrahima, Ibrahima, as opposed to Ibra, qalqala. Shortening the gunna on a heavy meme, for example, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ, وَمِمَّا. So the gunna is supposed to be وَمِمَّا. If you make it short, these are all examples of obscure mistakes or al-lahn al-khafi. Any questions on lahn al-khafi and lahn al-jali before we move on?
No, Sheikh.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually covered this part in the last lesson, so we're going to move. Yeah, reciting the Quran with melodies. All right, so this is referring to committing the tajweed to the melody, because some melodies you need to say longer in order to have the proper melody. So it's supposed to go a certain way, have a certain wavelength to continue with that melody. So is it permissible to commit to melodies when reciting the Quran? The ruling of reading the glorious Quran with melodies. Music, it is a foreign acoustic science with its own rules and restrictions. Among its most important topics are the different vocal ranges, and 2, the durations of lengthening. So the vocal ranges would be the lows and the highs, and the duration of lengthenings. How long are you holding the note in order to stay within the musical melody or whatnot? So these two topics overlap with the science of tajweed. As for the vocal ranges, there is nothing wrong with the reciter shifting from one vocal pitch to another when this occurs from one letter to the next. This means, for example, ga, ta, ba. So those are 3 vocal ranges. Ga, ta, ba, ka, ta, ba. Each letter, I'm using a different vocal range. Ka, ta, ba, ka, ta, ba. So the Shaykh is saying that it's permissible as long as it's at you're changing the vocal range from one letter to another. So you can see, keep the same vocal range, ka, ta, ba, or you can change. However, when this is within one letter, such as the letters of lengthening and nasalization, the reciter should commit to one vocal pitch, because distorting this will separate the single letter into several letters. And scholars have forbidden this. An example of that is غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So what's happening there is you're pronouncing more than one alif. Those are more than one alif. So that's what happens. So he's saying you should stick to one vocal range. وَلَا الضالين. It shouldn't be ضا وجاء. Any questions on that? هل في سؤال؟ Basically, when it comes to vocal ranges, it's permissible to change vocal ranges from one letter to the other. Within one letter, especially the med letters, we should not change vocal ranges. For prolonging, lengthening mudud and nasalization, the reciter should commit to the measures that the scholars of recitation mentioned in this respect. So if she distorts them, giving the musical rule to them, she commits a sin. For example, if the musical rule, in order for you to continue the tone or the melody, it has to be longer than 6 harakat, then you're committing the Quran to the rules of music, which is something that is haram. We have been commanded to recite the glorious Quran by means of Arabs' accents and sounds, which is to read in accordance with custom and natural disposition, as was their nature. For detailed information on the subject, you can refer to his book by His Eminence, Al-Bayanu li Hukmi Qira'at al-Qur'ani bil-Alhan, clarification on ruling of reading the glorious Quran with melodies. And this is available, I believe, online. Right. So again, to summarize, when it comes to reciting the Quran with melodies, either it has to do with changing the range, the vocal range. It's permissible to change the vocal range, moving from one letter to the next. However, when pronouncing ghunna or med, it is preferred that you don't. When it comes to lengthening the mudud, you don't make them longer based on the melodies. You keep the rules that pertain to tajweed. Any questions? If you have any questions at any time, please let me know. Do not be shy. They say 2 people do not learn: the one who is arrogant and the one who is shy. So I hope none of you are either. I mean, shyness is part of Iman, however, not when it comes to learning. The speeds of recitation. Okay, so before we start, I'd like to give a summary. There are 3 basic speeds of recitation, and these speeds are pretty much slow, medium, and fast. Slow, medium, and fast. The slow is usually used when teaching in a teacher's setting. And you'll find this usually with the recordings of the Quran that were made for teaching, the likes of Al-Husari and even Abdul Basit, Abdul Samad, Al-Minshawi. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. هكذا. So that's tahqiq, that's a slow. Then there's a level faster, which is used usually in the salawat al-khams, the 5 salawat. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And then the level faster is al-hadr, which is usually used in salat al-tarawih. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. Okay. The recitation of the glorious Quran has 2 speeds as follows. One is tahqiq. It is to recite slowly without stretching, meaning without overly stretching. Tajweed, it is moderation in speed of recitation. And hadr is reciting quickly without merging the letters. You're not saying Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. There you're eating the letters and you're merging the letters together. The term recitation or tartil includes 3 types because it is improving the letters and knowing where to stop. Tartil is to improve the letters, knowing where to stop. The reader of the Quran cannot do without recitation, cannot do without tartil, yani, no matter the speed of his or her reading. So anytime you're reciting the Quran, you should be reciting it with tartil, which has to do with improving the letters or correcting the letters and knowing where to stop. Right. Any questions? We're yet to get to the application part, so bear with me. Inshallah ta'ala. If you have any questions, I just want to ask if there's any questions, inshallah. Right. Moving on. All right, so this part has some application connected to it, inshallah ta'ala. The rule of seeking refuge and saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All right, so the first of all, what is the ruling of saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim? When a reader wants to read something from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he or she must begin or start with seeking refuge. Obedience to the Almighty Allah's words. إِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. So when you read the Quran, seek refuge with Allah from the outcast Satan. Whether his or her recitation is from the beginning or middle of the surah. All right, let's establish a rule. Anytime you want to recite the Quran, you have to say A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Anytime you'd like to recite the Quran, you have to say A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Whether you're beginning at the beginning of the surah or in the middle of the surah. Beginning of the surah, an example is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحاقة أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم براءة. Now I didn't say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning of Bara'ah because that's the only surah that does not begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So anytime you begin your recitation, you have to say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. If you're reciting out loud, meaning you're reciting out loud and you're listening to yourself or other people are listening to you, recite A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim out loud. If you're reciting silently, you say it silently. If you're reciting in salah, you say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim silently in salah. Any questions so far? But as for the basmallah, it is essential at the beginning of any surah of the glorious Quran except for Surah At-Tawbah, which was mentioned a minute ago. The reciter wants to read from the middle of a surah and not from its beginning, have the choice of starting with basmallah or not. However, seeking refuge is essential, as mentioned above. All right. So, Ibrahim, Abu Luqman, Ibrahim, are you there? طيب Sheikh Hassan.
نعم شيخ.
طيب Ibrahim, if I want to recite from قول الله تعالى إن بطش ربك لشديد, do I have to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم?
نعم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لكن مش ضروري نقول البسملة.
You don't have to say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
نعم.
طيب, what if I say I want to start from the beginning of Surah Al-Fajr? Do I have to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم?
نعم.
And what about بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم?
نعم and بسم الله.
You have to say both because you're starting from the beginning of the surah.
نعم.
Very good.
لكن سورة التوبة يا شيخ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم is necessary. Basmala is not permissible.
And this is in the case of beginning at that point, at that particular ayah or that particular surah.
نعم لكن لو بدينا من النص ولا من any other part of the سورة التوبة we're allowed to say Bismillah.
You're allowed to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, exactly.
نعم نعم. جزاك الله.
It's good to know that you're paying attention, Habibi.
نعم نعم أكيد. جزاك الله خير شيخ.
Barakallah. Moving on. All right. So, a point worth noting. With the rules that we just mentioned, we come to an issue now. If the middle of the surah where you're going to begin has a certain type of meaning. An example is وَقَالُوا اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They said that Allah Azza wa Jal has taken a son. Billah. Or شَيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرَ. The devil threatened you with the prospect of poverty. Does it make sense? Say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وقالوا اتخذ الله ولدا. Bilal, does that make sense?
Oh, yes. So in this case, it's just the person wants to say Basmallah, you don't have to say it because you're not at the beginning, right?
Say that again.
So in this case, these cases, it's the Basmallah, you're not at the beginning, so you don't have to do it, but if it's something that you want to do.
Right. So because it's in the middle of the surah, it's not important, or you have the choice to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now, because you have the choice to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it is inappropriate for you to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, because ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the merciful, the most beneficent, the most merciful, and you're beginning with his name, and you're saying, or you're starting with what the kuffar said and what Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying about what the kuffar said.
No.
It would be inappropriate for you to start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, likewise, anything that has to do with what the shaitan says, what the kuffar said. Like that. So there are a few places where it is better for the reciter to utter the Basmalah. Better. They are the verses relating to the disbelievers and invocation against them, or exposing the hypocrites, or mentioning the fire and its description, or mentioning shaitan, and these are examples. So you don't say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن بطش ربك لشديد. Right? Because this is referring to the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. And you want to seek refuge with Allah from his punishment. So you don't say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim inna batasha rabbika la shadid. So أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن بطش ربك la shadid. Is it permissible to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim inna batasha rabbika la shadid? Yes, it's permissible, but it's better not to. It's permissible in the sense that you're seeking Allah's assistance with His name when reciting the Quran. But it's inappropriate in the sense that the verses that you're beginning with is something that you're not, that you don't want to be associated with. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
Any questions on that? Can everybody hear me well? The sister is saying that the sound is not clear.
No, I can hear you perfectly, Sheikh.
So maybe if you're still not hearing well, sister, maybe you can exit the group and come back, exit the meeting and come right back, see if it helps.
يتقطع أحيانا يا شيخ، أحيانا يتقطع، لكن نسمعك جيدا لكن يتقطع أحيانا.
أنا عندي so far so good.
Check my internet. Gone. So basmala can also become obligatory. I'll see if that helps. So basmala can also become obligatory, which is the opposite of the previous slide. Previous slide, we said the basmala may be best not to say. This slide, basmala can become obligatory, which is the opposite of the previous one, where the meaning has to do with pronoun referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to Jannah, or the likes. So you don't say, you say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ilayhi rabbil al-Islam.
That was breaking up a lot.
Yeah, now you kind of breaking up, yeah, Sheikh. Can't hear what you're saying, Sheikh.
Abdullah. All right.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Yeah, يعني it's a little better, but your voice still
بسم الله. Fine. You guys have any questions on the slide? Regarding the slide?
yeah, Sheikh, are these just like examples? ولا يعني do we find other places in the Quran where it's better not to say Bismillah?
Of course, like you don't say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه. For example.
نعم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لله ما في السماوات. How you say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم? You don't say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الله نور السماوات والأرض.
نعم.
But it is obligatory to say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات.
نعم نعم جزاك الله خير.
Two ways of seeking refuge and saying the Basmallah. So this is a practical application of saying أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And this has to do with either connecting the two at the beginning of the recitation, and when I say connecting, meaning without taking a breath, connecting the two or connecting the three are أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, the beginning of recitation, whether it's Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, whatever the beginning of recitation is. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Do you say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, stop, take a breath? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, stop, take a breath? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Or do you say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, stop, take a breath? Alhamdulillah. Or do you say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. You say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. So it has to do with stopping and joining. Right? So the Basmallah, there are 4 ways of which are correct. بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Oh, Sheikh, the sound is going out again.
الشيطان الرجيم.
Oh, Sheikh, I still can't hear you. No, I still can't hear you.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me now?
No, Sheikh, we can hear you.
No,
But it seems like there's an echo. Small
Is there an echo?
No, there isn't. No, now it's perfect.
You can see me, right?
We can just see your a picture of you.
But you can see, you can't, but you don't
I
see it.
have two.
Okay.
There's two.
can see the video, right?
images.
Okay. So I'm sorry about the technical difficulty.
ممتاز.
That's better, right?
Oh yeah, this is better.
Okay. All right. So the permissible ways, yeah. So the permissible ways of seeking refuge in Basmallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Stop and take a breath. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Stop and take a breath. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Sheikh Hassan, give that one try.
قطع الجميع.
قطع الجميع, yes. Cutting off all three.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
The second one is, as the Sheikh mentions, seeking refuge, separating seeking refuge from the Basmallah and joining Basmallah with the beginning of the recitation. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. And if you noticed, I added السميع العليم. It's permissible to add any of the names of Allah Azza wa Jal when you're saying أعوذ بالله. So you can say أعوذ بالله السميع العليم الغفور الرحيم الشكور الوهاب من الشيطان الرجيم. Or you can just say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان or أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. All is permissible. So أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Brother Bilal, try that one.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
So you're applying a kasra on the meme. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Try that one more time. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
أحسنت. So that's two. The third permissible way is joining seeking refuge with the basmallah and separating the basmallah from the beginning of recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. You want to try that, Sister Malal?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you try reciting the third option, please?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
So the third option is to join with one breath. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Stop. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Try that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
So when you stop on Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, you stop with a sukoon. So let's try it again. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
أحسنتي. بارك الله فيكي. Sister Ala, try the last one, joining all. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Let's take a deep breath for this one. Sister Ala. Sister Layan.
Yes.
Yeah, give it a try.
Which one?
The last one, for joining all. One breath.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Very good. Jazakallahu khairan. So those are four permissible ways to reciting the beginning when beginning a recitation, starting with A'udhu Billah, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah. And it can be أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول, for example. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض, as another example. All right. Any questions on these four permissible ways? Right, moving on. Now we have another issue which has to do with joining basmala between two surahs. So you're ending, for example, Surah Al-Falaq, and you're beginning with Surah Al-Nas. So Surah Al-Falaq ends with Hasad. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ. And Surah Al-Nas begins with قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And then there's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim between them. So there are four possible ways, which are the same four that we did with Isti'adha, Basmala in the beginning of the surah. So cutting off or separating all three is the first option. The second option is separating the first from the second and joining the second with the third. The third option is joining the first with the second and separating the second from the third. And the fourth option is joining all three. So those options are all possible when joining between two surahs. However, one of them is impermissible. The one that is impermissible or forbidden is the one where you join the first with the second and separate the second from the third. That one is impermissible. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the reason for that in just a few minutes. But first we'll practice. We'll say, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Stop. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Stop. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. You want to give that a try, Sister Yasmin?
Surah Al-Falaq and
The end of
Nas.
Surah Al-Falaq, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. يلا.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ.
So the one that you did is permissible. It's optional, but that's not the one that we're practicing now.
Is that number 3?
That was number
2.
Number 2.
Okay.
So we want to do number 1 where we're separating all three.
Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ.
Very good. Jazakillahu khairan. So the second permissible way is to separate and to join Basmala with the beginning of the surah. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس. Sister Ala, are you there? You want to give it a try? طيب. إبراهيم.
معك شيخ.
يلا بسم الله.
Okay, I'm doing number 3 شيخ.
Number 2.
Number 2. آخر سورة الفلق.
أيوة. ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. آخر الآية. Sorry شيخ.
ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد.
ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس.
أحسنت. بارك الله فيك. طيب. Sheikh Bilal, let's give it a try for the last or the third possible way. ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس.
Ahsant, barakallahu feek. And the fourth possible way is impermissible because we don't want it to sound like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of the ending of the previous surah. So if you say, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. The listener may think that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of Surah Al-Falaq. So we don't do that. Any questions? So to recap, when it comes to isti'adha, basmala, beginning of recitation, there are four permissible ways, separating all three. That's the first permissible way. The second permissible way is to recite the first, to separate the first from the second, and to join the second with the third. The third possible way is to join the first with the second, separating the second from the third. And the fourth possible way and permissible way is to join all three. However, when it comes to between surahs, the ending of the surah, basmala, the beginning of the following surah. So there are three permissible ways and four possible ways. The fourth one is forbidden. The three permissible ways are to separate all three, to join the second with the third while separating the first from the fourth, from the second, to join all three, and the one that is impermissible is to join the first and second and then separate the second from the third. Do you guys have any questions on that? Please do not hesitate to ask. If there's no questions, we'll move on, inshallah ta'ala. All right. So we're moving on. Yeah, so the forbidden way of joining the basmala between two surahs is what we mentioned earlier, separating the basmala from the beginning of the next surah. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. Stop. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. This way is forbidden because it gives false impression that the basmala is related to the finished or completed surah. And I think that's clear. Any questions on that?
No.
Much. The reciter should be careful to adhere to the parsing and the rules of the Arabic language or the Arabic grammar when he or she links seeking refuge with the basmala at the beginning of the surah. So you see at the end of the mushaf, you'll see that ar-rajimi فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ is written in Surah Al-Nahl. So you'll see it has a kasra on it. So when you're reciting, you make sure that you pronounce the kasra. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, iqra. So when you join, because iqra is hamzat wasl, and this is something I will discuss when we get to it, inshallah ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaqa. Does someone want to try doing this one? Bonus? Brother Mahid Habli, I haven't heard from you today.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك.
أحسنت يا ماهر جزاك الله خيرا. Very good.
And I have brother Ihsan sitting next to me.
ما شاء الله.
So
طيب, we'll get him next inshallah. Yalla. So that you pronounce the letter meme with a kasra at the end of the seeking refuge, as well as the meme in ar-rahimi with a kasra, and you drop the linking hamza from iqra. So all of these are rules that you have to make sure you follow when you are practicing the permissible ways of connecting the isti'adha and basmala in the beginning of surah. Inshallah ta'ala. Any questions? Nish. All right. So this topic is a kind of need to know topic, and to give you a better understanding of how the alphabet works. So there are two ways of counting the alphabet, either 28 or 29 letters. There are two ways of counting the alphabet, either 28 or 29 letters. So if you're thinking about the sounds of the alphabet, is going to be 29 letters. The sound is 29 letters. If you're thinking about using these letters as quantifiers, they are 28 letters, and I will explain. So Sheikh Ayman Suwaid here mentions the Arabic letters. He says pronounced Arabic alphabet. Pronounced meaning the alphabet that you hear, the sounds of the letters that have sound, that have distinct sounds. They're 29. The letters of the Arabic alphabet are 29 letters, arranged by Imam Nasr ibn Asim al-Laythi, who passed away in 90 Hijriya, in accordance with the similarity of script among them. He dotted them in order to differentiate the similar ones. So the first letter is Alif, and you see that it has a Hamza on top of it. So that first letter actually represents the sound, the sound. Okay, so that we say Alif. We don't say Hamza. Okay, we say Alif. Any questions on that? Right. And then, of course, the rest are pretty clear, but the reason why they're color-coded is to indicate which ones look similar and are made different with vowels. So the ba, ta, tha are similar. The jim, ha, kha are all similar. Dal and dhal are similar. Ra and zai are similar. Sin and shin are similar. Sad and dad are similar. Ta and dha are similar. Ain and ghain are similar. Fa and qaf are similar. Kaf and lam are similar. Mim, noon, and ha have similarities, meaning how they were originally written. Wow. And then we have this lam alif. So the lam alif, and then we have the ya. And the reason why these three are made red is because these are the elongation letters. So the lam alif that's at the end is referring to the alif that indicates elongation. Right? So for example, in the word qala, so you have qaf fatha, that's qa. Then you have an alif. That alif indicates that that qa needs to be longer. Instead of qa, it needs to be qa. So the alif at the beginning represents the hamza, and the lam alif at the end represents the alif mad. So therefore you have 29 sounded letters or pronounced Arabic letters. Any questions on that? All right. The alif, which is at the beginning of the letters of the alphabet, is the hamza, which is what I mentioned a minute ago. As for the lengthening alif, it is the letter preceding the last one, and it is expressed as lam alif. because it is always sakina, and the letter that precedes it always has a fatha. Okay, cases of the Arabic letter. All right, any questions on what we previously mentioned? So, like, moving on. So, cases of the Arabic letters except for fatha. The Arabic letters are either going to be voweled or non-voweled. As for the letter alif, it is always sakina, and the letter that precedes it always has a fatha. Regarding the stressed letter, it consists of two letters. The first is sakin, and the second is vowel. And allow me to demonstrate. All right. So for example, we have, let's say, my writing is not clear. Let me erase this and put in a text box so you all can see. And we're writing, for example, haqqat. Right? So haqqat is actually what we hear, that's how we write it, but what we hear is haqqat. You see that? So how we write it is this, but how we hear it is this. Haqqat. Haqqat. So technically, a letter with a shadda is not a case of the letters. The letter is either vowel or non-vowel. Is that clear? Any questions on that? Any questions? Before I forget, those of you who are not in the group, the WhatsApp group, please send your phone numbers so I can add you to the WhatsApp group, so you can have the quiz material, and you can have a reference to where to purchase this curriculum book from, inshallah ta'ala. And Ibrahim, if you can, collect those numbers and add them to the WhatsApp group. You got that, Ibrahim?
Hada, Sheikh. I got most of them in the group.
Okay. Khayran. طيب, so a letter is either voweled or non-voweled. It's either mutaharrik or sakin. Sakin means not moving. Mutaharrik means moving. And that movement is either with opening, fatha, or with encompassing, dhamma, or with breaking, kasra. One of the three. And these are the sounded or pronounced letters. Any questions about the pronounced or sounded letters, my dear brothers and sisters? All right. So they say, no news is good news. And I believe, inshallah, you all understand. And those who have a misunderstanding will, inshallah, be clear when the quiz is taken. And I implore you to please pay attention and make sure you take the quiz, because usually if there's something that you're not really getting, you'll get during the quiz, inshallah ta'ala. Can everyone see the slide? Yes.
No.
All right, moving on. So we said the previous letters are the pronounced Arabic alphabet. Then these are the written Arabic alphabet. So the written Arabic alphabet is usually used as quantifiers, right? They're used as quantifiers, like numbers. So he's saying their order according to the Eastern scholars. Eastern scholars would be Egypt and the Khalij, the Gulf countries or the Gulf area. These are the Eastern scholars. The Western scholars would be the scholars of Morocco and Andalusia and whatnot. The one that is more famous or widespread is the one of the Western scholars. So to make it clear so that you understand what I'm saying, the alif or the hamza is 1, the ba is 2, the jim is 3, the dal is 4, ha is 5, waw is 6, za is 7, ha is 8, ta is 9, and ya is 10. Okay? So alif through ya, that's 1 through 10. Kaf is 20. Lam is 30, Mim 40, Noon 50, Sin 60, Ain 70, Fa 80, Sad 90, and Qaf is 100. Ra 200, Shin 300, Ta 400, Ta 500, Kha 600, Dhal 700, Dad 800, Dha 900, and Ghain 1,000. So that's how they use them as quantifiers. You guys have any question?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So then the alphabets you said as quantifiers, that's like in relation of numbers, or
Yes, sir.
I don't understand it all the way.
I mean, this is kind of like a side note, but it's related to how the letters are used, because in history, numbers were an issue, especially when it came to writing the numbers out, especially if they're long numbers. So for a long time, the numerals didn't exist. So the Roman numerals are long, and those were used in the Roman Empire. The Arabic numerals are the ones that are used nowadays in the West. So how we write numbers, those are Arabic numerals, are called Arabic numerals. Okay? And the numbers or the numerals that are used in the Arab world are actually Indian numerals. So if you were to write the number 1568, you'd have to write 0, 1, no, not 0. What is it? O-N-E-T-H, and that whole thing. They didn't have numerals back then. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The one thing they used to do is, instead of writing out the whole number, the ghain represents 1,000. So they'd write, if say, for example, 1,010, they would write a ghain and a ya. So that means 1,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to make it easy for themselves. Any questions on that?
Allah.
What? So the Sheikh is adding an extra note here. Ash-Shatibi in his poem Hirz al-Amani followed the order of the Western scholars, and Ibn al-Jazari followed him in At-Tayyibah. So in the science of qira'at, in the science of the modes of recitation of Quran, what is most famous is the Western way of using these letters as quantifiers, or the written Arabic alphabetic letters. Inshallah. Moving on. Okay. So now, just give me 1 second.
Sheikh, I'm gonna have my phone a little quiet for the next 5-10 minutes. أعذرني.
All right, so this particular juncture of the book, or this place, is where we're getting into the nitty-gritty, so to speak, or the important parts of Tajweed. Articulation points. So every letter has a specific or exact place of articulation, or most letters, right? There's only 3 that don't. Can you guys hear me?
No.
Yes.
All right. So he's starting off as letting us know, okay, what are the organs of speech? Okay. So the organs of speech are going to be these 4. The organs of speech and how sounds and letters occur. The main articulation points of the Arabic letters. These are 4. Okay. 1 is the empty space in the throat and mouth. 2 is the throat. 3 is the mouth. 3rd is the nasal cavity. All right. And we'll look at, there's a diagram for this, inshallah ta'ala. So the empty space in the throat and mouth, the throat, the mouth, and the nasal cavity. Now, some scholars say, they categorize, or they split the mouth into 2 places, into 2 parts, actually. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Right. So some scholars, they split the mouth into 2. This is one part of the mouth. And this is the other part of the mouth, which would make it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Make sense?
Yeah.
Depending on how you look at it, it's either 4 main articulation points or 5 main articulation points. So if you say 4, it's going to be the empty space in the throat and mouth, the throat, the mouth, the nasal cavity. That's 4. If you say 5, you're going to say the empty space in the throat and mouth, the throat, and we'll call all of this the tongue. Handwriting is terrible. Don't hold it against me. Why are we calling this the tongue? Because the tongue with the upper palate, the tongue with the teeth. It's all the tongue. The lips is number 4, and nasal cavity is number 5. Any questions? Any questions?
You said the empty space in the throat, in the mouth. That's like can you explain that a little bit more?
We'll get to that. Don't worry about it. But I just want you guys to know the numbers.
Okay.
It's either 5 or 4. Okay? It's not, it's just 2 different ways of looking at it. All right? In terms of explaining it all, we'll get to that, inshallah. Don't worry about it. All right. Moving on. All right, and here you see a diagram of how everything looks. You guys can see that, right? So you have the throat, which is the blue area. The empty space in mouth and throat, Brother Mahid, that's this here. So the green and the blue, all of that, that's the empty space in the mouth and throat. Is that clear, Brother Mahid?
Yes.
Then you have the nasal cavity, which is, of course, the nose, the nostrils. The upper palate, that's the ceiling of the mouth, where the tongue touches up top. You have the lips, which everyone knows, of course. You have the teeth, which you use to eat. And you have the tongue, which is this muscle here. So the 5 or the 4 main articulation points are the empty space, which is the green and the blue. All of that open space, all of that openness, that's the empty space in the throat and mouth. That's also called al-jawf. I want you guys to remember that. Al-jawf. The empty space, the green and the blue. Then you have the upper palate. You have the throat. The throat is the blue part. Okay. The tongue, of course, the muscle of the tongue, the nasal passage, the teeth and the lips. Right? So that's everything you need. These are the organs of speech. And how Allah Azza wa Jalla created us, subhanallah, in this small area of space, you can pronounce so many different letters. And that's of the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jalla upon us. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you were to quantify the favors that Allah has upon you, you would never be able to enumerate them, subhanallah. Right, any questions on these main organs or main articulation points? Because we're going to get into every letter and each letter and its specific articulation point in the mouth and in the nose and in the throat and in the empty space in throat and mouth. Right, moving on. All right, parts of the throat. So go back a slide. The throat is the blue spot, the blue area. This blue area has 3 parts. أقسام الحلق. Okay. The easiest to remember is closest, middle, and furthermost. That's the easiest to remember. أدنى الحلق, وسط الحلق, أقصى الحلق. That's the easiest to remember. If you want to get technical, you would say root of the tongue or جذر اللسان, epiglottis or لسان المزمار, vocal cords or الأوتار الصوتية here. So these are the three parts of the throat. Root of the tongue, closest part of the throat. Middle of the throat, the epiglottis. And the furthermost part of the throat, which is the vocal cords. The throat has three parts. Closest means closest to the lips. Middle and furthermost part means furthermost part from the lips. Any questions on these three parts of the throat? So we're getting to know these articulation areas. We're finding out, we're learning more about them, right? We haven't yet started identifying to which letter or to which articulation point each letter belongs. We're not there yet. All right, any questions about the parts of the throat? No? Right, moving on. All right. The parts of the hard palate, the upper palate. Okay. The upper palate has, starting from the back, for the most part, you have the uvula, which is the thing that hangs out in the back. It's hanging. And the uvula is in the area of the tongue's root, the root of the tongue, jadr al-lisan. If you notice, the uvula and the root of the tongue are right there in the same area. Then you have the soft palate. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to feel with your tongue the upper palate. So starting from the front and going all the way to the back, you should feel that all of this is hard, and all the way here in the back, it is soft like a pillow. You guys feel that? Anyone not feel the softness of the pillow in the back? You guys with me?
Yeah.
Right. I just, they say feedback is breakfast of champions. So I'm trying to make sure I get the feedback. Then you have the hard palate, or the bone palate, al-hanak al-azmi, al-salb, and that's here. And if you feel it, it's hard. Then you have the pre-palate area, which is the roughage area where there's like mountainous terrain up there. Feels like if you drive your car, you know, you'll mess up your tires and your wheels. Then all the way at the front, you have the gums. So these are parts of the upper palate. So we finished, we got through parts of the throat. We got through parts of the upper palate. Now moving on to parts of the tongue. Okay. So starting from the back, we have the root of the tongue, which is parallel to the uvula. Root of the tongue is parallel to the uvula. Then you have the furthermost part of the tongue, which is parallel to the soft palate. You guys with me? So the furthermost part of the tongue is parallel to the soft palate here. Furthermost part of the tongue is parallel to the soft palate. Middle of the tongue is parallel to the hard palate or the bone palate, the middle of the tongue. Then you have the tip of the tongue, right? The tip of the tongue, which covers the pre-palate and the gums. So the pre-palate to the gums is parallel to the tip of the tongue. And the frontmost part of the tongue is parallel to the upper incisors, the two front teeth, or even the gums. I'm going back and forth, I know, but I just want you guys to see how the tongue and the upper palate meet. Then you have this part, which is showing us the edge of the tongue. The edge of the tongue is this part right here, on both sides, actually. Right? This part right here, the edges of the tongue on both sides. So the furthermost part of the edge is here. And all of this is the edge of the tongue. This is the closest part of the edge. And this is the end of the edge. All right, any questions on the parts of the tongue?
سؤال يا شيخ.
تفضل يا شيخ.
يعني the thought of tip, I mean, usually I know in English at least we think of tip as being like the further, you know, I don't know, I just see that, I see that as problematic, ambiguous, at least the English words, right? Tip and frontmost.
Yeah, so the reason why he's differentiating between the tip and the frontmost is because there is a difference in which part is used for different letters. So on the tongue, right, if you kind of like examine your own tongue, and I'm going to go ahead and stick my tongue out. This part here that's called the tip of the tongue, that's what this is here. That little bit. Just there. And technically it is the tip. Now when he says the furthermost part of the tongue, Ra'sul Lisan, he's referring to just that little bit right there. Right? So the reason is he wants to make a distinction between the two. It's a very small area that we're talking about. But here you can see it's, you know, made bigger. Does that make sense?
نعم والعربية يعني أوضح. But yeah, I think what about ظهر اللسان عندما يقع في بعض الكتب مثلا ظهر اللسان.
The problem with ظهر اللسان is it could mean the whole ظهر. بس Ibn al-Jazari, for example, he says لظهر أدخل. هذا من باب التفضيل، أفعل التفضيل، يعني أدخل إلى ظهر اللسان منه إلى رأس اللسان. عرفت يا شيخ؟
نعم نعم.
والراء يدانيه لظهر أدخل، يعني الراء أدخل إلى الظهر منه إلى الرأس وإن كان على الطرف. Any more questions? طيب ماشي. So these are parts of the tongue. Now we get to the teeth. You all have to learn the teeth. Okay? So the front teeth are called central incisors. Then the next ones over are the lateral incisors. The next one over are called canines. The next one over are called premolars. The next one over are called molars. And the last ones are wisdom teeth. Premolars are 6 on the bottom, 6 on top. And all the rest, or the central incisors are 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. The rest are, 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, right? So all teeth are 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, except for the molars. They're 3 on top, 6 on top and 6 on the bottom. So what I'd advise is you keep this image handy when reviewing the teeth. Inshallah ta'ala. Actually, these past 3 or 4 images are quite important. So we'll share them all on the group, inshallah ta'ala. You guys have any questions? Any questions whatsoever?
I have a question about the quizzes.
Sure.
Will it be in-depth like memorization of this type of information, or will it be application of the information, like applying what you learned to like ayahs of the Quran?
So when it comes to articulation points and characteristics and rules, you're expected to know them. And in order to know them, you just have to practice. So I sent these 4 or these few images on the WhatsApp group so that you can have a reference in front of you. So kind of like quiz yourself back and forth. And the reason these are so important is because when you lack knowledge of these specific details, this is where people make mistakes when pronouncing letters. So when you have these details, you have better tools to be able to pronounce the letters bi'idhnillah correctly.
Okay,
And you'll also be able to
thank you.
say that again, sister.
No, I was saying thank you. Do we have to know them in Arabic too, or English is?
It's up to you. If you just know the English one, if the English is easy for you, do the English. If the Arabic is easy for you, do the Arabic. If you want to be fancy, do both the Arabic and English.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
وجزاكم خير. الله يبارك فيكم. طيب. So to I guess add to the understanding of the teeth, Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Yusuf al-Sarsari, he said ثنيات الفتى رباعيات وأنياب الفتى كل رباع وأربع الضواحك ثم وست في طواحنها انتفاع وأربع النواجد ما لماض إذا عري الفتى عنها ارتجاع. The young man's central and lateral incisors and canine teeth are 4 in number. The premolars are 4, then 6, plus 6 are the useful molars. The wisdom teeth are 4. They cannot be brought back if the young man loses them. And these are the, if I counted correctly, 32 teeth. Right? All right, and I'm done today, inshallah ta'ala, unless you guys have any questions. Now, there's 2 quizzes that you are required to take now, inshallah ta'ala. One has already been uploaded. The second one, inshallah, will be uploaded by Sunday, inshallah ta'ala. There's a lot to remember, but inshallah, if you practice and quiz yourselves, a few minutes a day, 10, 20 minutes a day, inshallah, should be easy. Barakallah fikum. If you don't have any questions, jazakumullah khairan.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair, ya Sheikh.
Ameen wa yakum. Next week's class, inshallah, will be in person. I do plan on making the option for Zoom, but I'd rather have everyone in person because you're able to kind of, how would you say, make corrections better and, hear people better. And, it helps, kind of having that face-to-face feedback. Inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, just for the people that missed the first week about the material and like where to do the tests and stuff, you're going to send the information on the group?
Yes, so the test is on the group. I can send it again. As for the material, I'll send the link on the group as well, inshallah.
All right. Jazakallah khairan.
Wa jazakallah khairan.
Assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون